as sharp as a scythe with the muscles of a snake. He can run, he can crawl, he can grab through the air. Watch him wrap it all up without turning a hair. The amazing Spider-Man.
Hello gang, it's David here with another episode of Model Behavior, and this time we're going to delve into something very special. What we're going to do is we are going to create a diorama with Marvel Legends depicting the core characters in one of my all-time favorite single-issue comics. We are going to model Sabertooth in the Red Zone. Now, this issue came out right as I started getting into comics, and my only exposure of the X-Men up to this really was, of course, the 90s cartoon and a whole bunch of free trading cards that I had won from entering an NBA Jam competition on the Sega Mega Drive that was being hosted by Blockbuster Video. And if that's not the most 90s sentence anyone has ever said, I will eat my backwards baseball cap. Even though I had only just started collecting Spider-Man, I was drawn to this comic. Why? Because it was the 90s, therefore it had a bright foil chromium cover that just leapt off the shelf at me. So I thought, you know what? Okay, I'm gonna check this out. And oh my god, this is what the X-Men are? This is not what I'm used to. This is not what we saw in the cartoon. This is brutal and violent and dark, and it's a complex character study of these formerly two-dimensional cartoon characters that I'd seen on a kids' TV show. All of a sudden, we were dealing with these folks on a completely different level, and I was fascinated. So what we're going to do is we are going to go through the story, modeling the characters as they appear. Some of them I don't have the figures for, so we're just going to take a little look at them via pictures, and I'll go give my 2 cents on them because I wanted to do an X-Men story, and you would not believe how many X-Men stories feature Rogue. She's in a lot of them. This one, she's not in though. However, Psylocke is. Don't have her. Caliban is. Don't have him. But you know what? It's fine, because I've got most of them. And we're gonna make do with what we have, because baby, this is the story that warrants telling. So before we get into the Red Zone itself, let's take you back to how we got here. First of all, we have Sabertooth himself. Victor Creed, Wolverine's arch nemesis, a guy who in the cartoon was pretty much just portrayed as a bit of a dick. That's all it was, because it was a cartoon. You couldn't see him eviscerating people with his bare hands, so he was just someone who had a grudge against Wolverine. It was only upon picking up the comics themselves that I realized, oh wow, this guy is a real nasty piece of work. So Sabertooth has the same kind of affliction that Wolverine has. He has this berserker rage in his mind, but where Wolverine was able to go to Charles Xavier and have Xavier help sort of psychically coach him through it and get those impulses out of him, Sabertooth never had that. So instead he just indulged in this bloodlust. Now he had a psychic companion, a girl called Birdie, who would help him manage this on occasion, but eventually she was killed, so he was left with no other choice but to go to the X-Men finally, and in his own strange way ask for help by essentially letting them capture him, and therefore he knew that Xavier would do everything in his power to try to treat him and rehabilitate him. So our story starts with Victor Creed imprisoned in the X-Mansion. Not sure if that's legal, due process and fair trial and all that kind of thing, but it's fine. So he's in the prison, in the X-Mansion, and Wolverine is not best pleased about this at all, as you can imagine. So while most X-Men are trying to hope for the best, you know, try and encourage him to change his ways, Wolverine's like, nah, calling it now. Wolverine was Ian Malcolm in Jurassic Park. He's like, this is gonna end badly. So in an issue of Wolverine, which is, again, it's a pedestal issue, it's one of my favorites. Wolverine has been watching Sabertooth like a hawk, and he's trying to figure out, like, why, what is he doing? Why is he doing the sort of actions he's doing in his cell? Because Sabertooth is throwing himself against the electro field of the cell, and it keeps just, like, shooting him back and horribly burning him, and Wolverine's like, this is weird. So we have a scene that we never see in comics, which I really loved. We see Wolverine working out and eating and training, because all these comic characters have insane physiques and rippling abs, and it's like, we never see you working out. Thank you, Adam Kubert, for drawing Wolverine in a gym, lifting weights, eating clean, and actually it's like, oh, well, there you go. That's why Wolverine is ridiculously jacked. He actually works out. But it's while he's working out that Wolverine has this epiphany of like, oh my God, he's been throwing himself against these electric bars for the whole purpose of conditioning himself to be able to eventually fight through and escape. And that is exactly what Sabertooth does. Wolverine charges to his cell at the precise moment that Creed rips through the field and he is out and he is loose. And Wolverine, you can tell he's like, you know what? I'm glad this has happened because now we can't get along, so let's get it on. Wolverine and Sabertooth have this insane throwdown. It is amazing. And speaking of these two characters, I think it's time to take a look at Wolverine. So here we have the Wolverine, which I've taken from the X-Men Love Triangle 3-pack. It's funny, I wasn't originally planning on collecting X-Men, and then what happened was I got the Apocalypse bath, because I was like, I just want the Apocalypse, because he looks so cool. And then, of course, once I had the Apocalypse, I was like, well, Archangel looks incredibly cool as well, so I'll get them together, because he's Apocalypse's horseman, that makes sense. Then I'm like, I've got Archangel, you know what? I'm going to get the original 5 X-Men, all right? Just get those 5. And I'm like, well, of course, you've got to have Xavier as well. And then I thought, well, I need Cyclops and Jean, so I've got to get the 3-pack. But the 3-pack has Wolverine, so I might as well, you know, just get all the 92 X-Men. And that's how these things happen. But of all the characters to get, 92 Wolverine in the 3-pack is perfect. I love, love, love this figure. There's been 1,000 different Wolverine figures made. I think it's between him and Deadpool as to who has had the most Marvel Legends. But look at this guy. What an excellent representation. This is just perfect 90s Wolverine. He's got the adamantium claws, but he's got the bone claws. That's what we want. Bone claw 90s Wolverine. And this is represented fantastically. He's got the different heads. He's got classic masked head. So you can have classic masked head with adamantium claws, which is what I normally display because that's my main Wolverine. But for the reasons of this story, for the purposes of this story, let's have bone claws Wolverine. And I'm going to take the head from the brown costume vintage Wolverine because again, it perfectly depicts the scene that we're looking at in the comic right now. So we have this perfectly depicted Wolverine right here facing off with Sabertooth. And in one of the most epic moments in Wolverine comics, Wolverine's just trying to take him down and throw him back in his cell, but Sabertooth is goading him, he's riling him, because one thing we start to learn about Sabertooth's character is he hates himself. He hates himself. He doesn't want to actually live, we don't think. He wants Wolverine to finish him off. Because this is also based in a time where Wolverine and Sabertooth's healing factors have not really been tested to the max yet. It's before it got silly, basically. Nowadays, Wolverine can virtually be reduced down to an atom and he'll regenerate, which is stupid. I don't know if that's been retconned, but it really should have by now. Anyway, we'd only recently seen Wolverine had his adamantium ripped out of him, and that taxed his healing factor to the level and the limit where he almost didn't survive, and they even said, you know what, it's not going to work so well now because it's been pushed too far. That's what it should be like. So Wolverine is squaring off with Sabertooth, and finally Sabertooth goads Wolverine into taking that extra step. Finally going over the edge and crossing the line. Wolverine, in the most classic Wolverine move that we've seen him do 1,000 times, he has Sabertooth's head pinned up. He's got one claw there, schnicked. He's got the other claw there, and he's just begging. He's like, give me an excuse. And Creed is like, I'm going to help you out here. If you let me go, even if you put me back in the cell, I'm going to break out eventually, and then I'm going to kill all your friends, I'm going to kill all your family, I'm going to find your dog, I'm going to find your mother, your hamster, your brother, your cousin, your nephew, your former roommate, I'm going to kill everybody. And he's like, do it, do it, do it, do it! And then we just see Sabertooth's eye shatter. And from there, we roll into the Age of Apocalypse. So what happens next? Well, we would have to wait 3 months to find out, but what a cliffhanger to end on. And that seems like a perfect way to end this first edition as well. So I'm gonna do these starting points. So we've cleared up who we're dealing with, where we are. We got Wolverine and Sabertooth. Wolverine is gonna leave this story now, but when we come back, it's post Age of Apocalypse, and we have a whole new dynamic with what remains of Sabertooth in the X Mansion, and in the next edition of Model Behavior, we're going to find out what the dynamic is in the X Mansion that leads us to the main event of Sabertooth in the Red Zone.